Good morning and welcome to Africa Good Morning, where we bring you the latest in news stories from Africa and beyond. My name is Glenora Shipura and this is Ashwin Berry.
Good morning, Glenora. How are you feeling?
I'm good.
All right. Today is International Midwife Day. Now listen to this little poetry, if you will. The midwife considers the miracle of childbirth as normal and leaves it alone unless there's trouble. Now the obstetrician normally sees childbirth as trouble. If he leaves it alone, it's a miracle. Here's a video on International Midwife Day. Today is Thursday, the 5th of May, and these are your top stories on Africa Good Morning. Al-Shabaab claims deadly attack on AU base in Somalia. Al-Qaeda-linked militants overran an AU peacekeepers camp in the center of Somalia, a security source and the group said on Tuesday, in what appears to be one of the Al-Shabaab group's biggest attacks this year. A resident said 3 civilians died in crossfire during the attack. The number of AU soldiers killed or captured is unclear. The chairperson of the AU Commission, Moussa Faki Mahamat, said he paid tribute to the Burundian peacekeepers who lost their lives, but did not say how many died. Somalia is preparing to hold long-delayed presidential elections, with political rivalries having split the security services, distracted them from the fight against the Al-Shabaab insurgency. Somalia's presidency condemned the attack on the AU transition mission in Somalia base near Al Baraf, about 130 kilometers from the capital Mogadishu, and called for increased military support. The Mujahideen launched a pre-dawn raid on ATMIS military base in Al Baraf, an Al-Shabaab statement said. After a fierce firefight, the Mujahideen managed to overrun the base and are now in complete control of the entire military base. Al-Shabaab has been fighting for years to topple the central government and implant its rule in the country based on its strict interpretation of Sharia. Local officials in the Shabelle region and the AU Commission did not respond to requests for comment on the attack. Last month, Al-Shabaab attacked the country's main airport in Mogadishu.
UN Chief visits Sahel's martyred refugees. UN Chief Antonio Guterres on Tuesday visited a displaced people's camp in Niger, where he appealed for humanitarian and military aid for an impoverished country battling jihadist insurgents. Guterres traveled to the camp at Olam in the southwest of the country on the 4th day of a trip to West Africa, delayed by the crisis in Ukraine. He met with several dozen displaced people and refugees from Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso in a school courtyard at the camp. He said he had chosen to end his 2-day visit to Niger with the martyred population of Olam, a town in the Tillabéri border region which has been badly hit by jihadists. He also appealed for help for the Nigerian people and refugees, providing resources that opened the way for schools for everyone and hospitals which work. Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali are struggling with the jihadist insurgency that erupted in northern Mali in 2012 and spread to its neighbors 3 years later. Thousands of people have died and more than 2 million have fled their homes in 3 countries that rank among the poorest in the world. Niger has around 250,000 of internationally displaced people, in addition to 264,000 Nigerian and Malian refugees and 13,000 from Burkina, according to UN figures. The country is also struggling from food shortages as a result of a drought and the impact from a jihadist attacks on village farming.
In our next story, HRW warns of evidence of CAR massacre by Russian-speaking men. Russian-identified forces have committed grave abuses against civilians in the Central African Republic, Human Rights Watch has said in a new report. Based on its interviews, Human Rights Watch concluded that between 4 and 6 men blocked the road about 12 kilometers north of Bosangoa. They were standing next to 4 motorbikes, spoke Russian, and wore beige khaki clothes, scarves to cover their faces, military boots, gloves, and sunglasses, HRW said. While HRW believes the attackers were white and spoke Russian, they also cited the prefect of Bosangoa as providing a different account. According to the official, survivors of the attack said the gunmen were part of a local militia. The Central African Republic has been facing an armed insurrection for almost a decade, which started when mostly Muslim Seleka rebels started an uprising against the government of Francois Bozize in late 2012. Now, the legal status of Russian-speaking operatives in the CAR is not fully clear. HRW cited UN experts as saying the African country signed a bilateral agreement with Russia in August 2018, which allowed Russian instructors to be deployed on its soil. There is compelling evidence that Russian-identified forces supporting the Central African Republic's government have committed grave abuses against civilians with complete impunity, said Ida Sawyer, Crisis and Conflict Director at Human Rights Watch. HRW urged the CAR government to publish the findings of the commission it had allegedly set up into the Bosangoa killings and to look into all other allegations of abuse. The activists also urged Russia to cooperate with the injury.
In our next story, Tigray's ancient rock-hewn churches are under threat. The region has been embroiled in wars since November 2020. It has also caused the destruction of numerous historical monuments. Hagos Arbae Abe, a philologist, is documenting the region's heritage laws. He sheds light on new reports of destruction in Geralta, which hosts some of Tigray's oldest churches and monasteries. Geralta is a principally mountainous zone located in a sandstone escarpment in south-central Tigray. It is in the district of Hoasan, which is presumed to date back to the South Arabian migration to Ethiopia in 8th to 7th BC. Pottery inscriptions and hagiographic traditions dating back to the Aksumite period depict Geralta as one of the most important regions of ancient civilization in the Horn of Africa. Geralta's mountains give it one of the most captivating terrains in the northern Ethiopian highlands. Many of these mountains host ancient rock-hewn churches and monasteries, making the area a spiritual haven for pilgrims. These structures are recognized as World Heritage Sites. Despite having low levels of tourism development, the area was among Tigray's most popular travel destinations. More than 150 of the thousands of ancient churches and monasteries in Tigray are rock-hewn. Geralta accounts for a big share of this. Its ancient monasteries and churches are made up of a single bedrock and are carved into steep cliff sites. The sites have preserved thousands of manuscripts for centuries. They are treasure troves of architectural engineering and artistic design. The Geralta heritage monuments carry emotional and spiritual links for the people of Tigray. These sacred heritage objects are believed to connect people to God. They are believed to offer intercession and spiritual healing power. It is devastating for believers to live with the destruction of a manuscript used in hagiographic rituals for women's fertility, for instance. Heritage sites are sources of historical pride, indigenous knowledge, and cultural and religious identity. They are also a source of income through tourism. Losing this heritage may lead to identity and psychological crises. It could lead to rage and trauma, cultural shock, and social collapse. The economic benefits from tourism could also be lost. Finally, some heritage objects like manuscripts are epistemological tablets. They carry evidence of world history. Their destruction wipes out critical insights into humanity's past.
All right, that brings us to the end of the first half of our top stories. More news after the break.
Adam Tas is coming to Windhoek to help build a brighter future for education. Join us at the Sounds of Caring concert at Windhoek High School Vegkop on 20 and 21 May, where he will be performing with Von Arends and Rian Smith. Tickets cost 200 Namibian dollars and are available via eticket.my.na. All proceeds go towards the African Child Development Trust.
Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. Now continuing with our top stories. Muslim leaders reject terrorism. The Muslim community in Mozambique on Monday celebrated the end of the fasting month of Ramadan with appeals to peace and harmony, particularly in the northern province of Cabo Delgado, which has been ravaged by terrorist attacks perpetrated by jihadist groups since October 2017. In Nampula province, Sheikh Abdul Latifo guaranteed that Muslims repudiate armed violence and will cooperate with the government to identify those who are using Islam to manipulate and murder the population of Cabo Delgado. Addressing the terrorists, he said, "We shall use all means at our disposal to bring narratives that are alternatives to your malicious speeches. We shall show society what Islam is. We shall warn our young people not to fall into your poisonous traps. We shall block any attempts to turn our youths into your instruments." In Cabo Delgado, Provincial Governor Valige Tawabo, visiting Palma, one of the districts worst hit by terrorism, stressed the role of the Muslim community in resilience against armed violence. He urged the public to remain vigilant against people trying to disturb the province in the name of religion.
Natural resources must be part of the solution in fight against deforestation. Between 2010 and 2018, the rate of deforestation worldwide slowed by nearly 30% compared to the previous 10 years, according to a key report launched on Tuesday by the Food and Agriculture Organization. The Global Forest Resource Assessment Remote Sensing Survey warned, however, that from livestock grazing in South America to the expansion of croplands in Asia, the Earth's tropical rainforests still face a tremendous threat. Annual deforestation decreased by around 29% from 11 million hectares per year between 2000 and 2010 to 7.8 million hectares from 2010 to 2018, the survey revealed. Moreover, net forest area losses have more than halved during the survey period from 6.8 million hectares annually between 2000 and 2010 down to 3.1 million hectares per year from 2010 to 2018. By region, the highest level of deforestation between 2000 and 2018 occurred in South America, 68 million hectares deforested, followed by Africa, 49 million hectares. This is despite a slower deforestation rate in South America and South and Southeast Asia between 2000 and 2018. Cropland expansion is the main driver of deforestation, responsible for nearly half of global deforestation, followed by livestock grazing, accounting for 38.5%. In addition to the survey launch as part of Forestry Resources Assessment 2020, FAO on Monday launched its flagship State of the World's Forest Report 2022. The report underscored the three mutual reinforcing pathways of halting deforestation and maintaining forests, restoring degraded lands, and expanding reforestation and ensuring sustainable value chains.
Next, we talk about content creation as Gondwana's YouTube channel, Namibia Cam, attracts over 200,000 subscribers. With 200,000 subscribers and over 1,000 viewers from around the world at any one time, Gondwana Collection Namibia's webcam, positioned at the waterhole at Namib Desert Lodge, is outperforming many other webcams on the continent. The YouTube channel called Namibia Cam is becoming increasingly popular, reaching people from far and wide and making a difference in many people's lives. Stories are flowing in from the Namibia Cam community about the positive impact the wildlife camera is having on children overseas, terminally ill patients, autistic children, and even an emergency rescue center in San Francisco. It has inspired poetry, highlights nature and wildlife, and is motivating people to put a visit to Namibia on their bucket list. The success of the Namibia Cam is thanks to the Gondwana Collection, Namibia's IT and marketing team, in particular IT expert Jans Vito. And it started with an entirely different purpose in mind. Jans initially installed cameras at the Gondwana Collection lodges in 2010 to collect information for the weather site Namibia Weather. When in 2021 a viewer posted one of the webcam videos on YouTube, the Gondwana team was encouraged to do the same and registered the YouTube channel Namibia Cam in May that year. Now you can visit www.youtube.com/c/Namibia Cam to join this community. So basically go to YouTube, search for Namibia Cam, and if you want to be specific, www.youtube.com/c/Namibia Cam, so you can check out those beautiful visuals.
Yeah, and this is exciting news for our tourism industry.
Absolutely, indeed.
And in our next story, Kampala pollution way over recommended levels. Pollution levels in Uganda's capital, Kampala, are 5 to 7 times higher than the World Health Organization recommends. This is according to air quality data gathered from monitoring systems in the country in the last 7 months and released to mark the Global Air Quality Awareness Week. The data also showed that pollution levels during the period of study peaked countrywide in January 2022. Kampala Capital City Authority officials say dust from unpaved roads, emission from vehicles and industries, as well as the open burning of solid waste are responsible for the poor air quality. The 2021 World Air Quality Report ranked Kampala as one of the most polluted cities in the world.
All right, that brings us to the end of our top stories. After the break, we get more into World Press Freedom Day. Of course, naturally, that's one of our favorite days. So stay with Africa. Good morning. Now, the 3rd of May marked World Press Freedom Day. Now, we bring you a message by Dr. Taufik Jelassi, who was appointed as the UNESCO Assistant Director General for Communication and Information on 1st July 2021, just 2 months after the celebration of the 30th anniversary of the Windhoek Declaration in Namibia in 2021. Have a look.
Over the past 5 years, 85% of the world's population have experienced a decline in press freedom in their country. During the same period, 400 journalists have been killed while doing their job. In addition, global newspaper advertising revenues have dropped by half, severely threatening the survival of media outlets. These threats to the free exercise of journalism, as explored in the latest edition of UNESCO World Trends Report on Freedom of Expression and Media Development, have been further exacerbated by the rise of new technologies. While these technologies allow us to access more news than ever before, they expose us to disinformation and hate speech. They also raise new challenges to our privacy and personal data protection, with digital surveillance techniques being used by different actors in violation of the rights to privacy and freedom of expression. The digital sphere has provided new tools to those who wish to silence free expression, dissent, and investigations into wrongdoings. We have seen an increase in digital attacks, especially against women journalists. Journalism is today under digital siege, an issue so pressing that it has inspired the overall theme of the World Press Freedom Day 2022. It is therefore essential to ensure workable technological and regulatory solutions so that journalists can exercise their profession safely with their sources protected, and that we preserve our collective right to know, to express ourselves, and to protect privacy. Last year, the participants in the World Press Freedom Day conference adopted the Windhoek Plus 30 Declaration on information as a public good. The principles of this declaration have since been endorsed unanimously by UNESCO member states. However, to ensure that information and journalism remain public goods, we must work together to protect the rights of journalists and media professionals to work freely and safely. In this regard, as we mark this year the 10th anniversary of the UN Plan of Action on the safety of journalists and the issue of impunity, we need to increase our efforts and intensify our cooperation. Last year, during the COVID-19 pandemic, and for the first time ever, the Global World Press Freedom Conference connected most of the celebrations around the world through one virtual commemoration. This year, with the improvement of the sanitary conditions, we are returning to multiple celebrations and discussions around the world, both in person and virtually. On this World Press Freedom Day 2022, I invite you all to reflect upon the opportunities and challenges facing press freedom in the digital era. I am convinced that through joint efforts, we can together overcome these challenges as to ensure a future in which information remains a public good to the benefit of all people. I thank you for your attention and wish you a fruitful conference.
Still on World Press Freedom Day, as part of the annual World Press Freedom Day celebrations, the organization known as Reporters Sans Frontiers, or Reporters Without Borders, brings out its annual World Press Freedom Index. This year, the RSF laments what they call a new era of polarization. Let's take a look.
Reporters Without Borders World Press Freedom Index findings for 2022 are worrying, evidencing a new era of polarization set against a backdrop of information chaos, with deepening division among media within countries, but also between countries at the international level. Within democratic societies, divisions are growing with the spread of the Fox News model of opinion media, as well as disinformation circuits that are particularly amplified on social media. At the international level, democracies are being weakened as the rift grows between open societies and despotic regimes that control their media and online platforms while waging propaganda wars against democracies. Polarization on these two levels is fueling increased tension around the world, resulting in the scoring and rankings of this year's index.
Now, over the weekend, there was a big drug bust in Namibia, and it seems like the police in Zimbabwe are onto something as well, as $500,000 worth of assets have been frozen, a smuggler's assets, that is. To bring us this story and more is Talent Gore from Zimbabwe in Zimbabwe. Good morning, Talent. Please take it away.
Good morning, Ashrin. So, a man from Mutare is suspected to be the mastermind of a syndicate smuggling second-hand clothes into Zimbabwe from Mozambique. Edward Muamba has seen his property in trucks worth 500,000 United States dollars frozen by the High Court until he explains how he acquired them. So Mutare is the fourth largest city in Zimbabwe, and it borders Zimbabwe and Mozambique. So Zimbabwe banned the selling of second-hand clothes into the country. So people are now smuggling, second-hand clothes, and it is not allowed. So this man was given 30 days to explain in a sworn statement, including receipts and other proof, how he acquired the 2 commercial properties, a house, 5 trucks, or risk having the lot fortified to the state.
This Talent, sorry, we're going to need to move on quite quickly. If you could just check the placement of your microphone there. And I was quite surprised. I thought it was drugs. Turns out it was clothes. But if you could please get into the next story about 9 being arrested for stealing 66 cattle.
So there are men in Beatrice who were arrested for stealing 66 cattle. Apparently, there is another syndicate which is going about stealing people's cattle, especially in the Beatrice district. So 5 people have been arrested, and 9. The police first arrested 5, and now they arrested another 4. So 9 people have been arrested in connection with stealing cattle. Apparently, the 66 cattle, only 35 were recovered after some of them were sold to those people who have butcheries, and they were sold for meat.
Now, in your next story, I understand that government and private schools have hiked school fees, citing the weakening Zimbabwe dollar. Can you tell us more?
Government and private schools have hiked school fees, citing the weakening Zimbabwean dollar. While the bulk of schools were still assessing the situation, some private schools such as Falcon College, St. George's, and Prince Edward, which is a government school run, have hiked fees. Apparently, parents of children at Falcon are expected to fork out 1.3 million Zimbabwean dollars, which is equivalent to 2,500 United States dollars on the black market, or 6,300 United States dollars on the official rate. So parents, there was an outrage as some parents are saying that they can't afford the school fees. Last term, parents at Falcon College were paying 600,000.
Unfortunately, we're going to need to cut you off there, and I never like to cut you off because you certainly bring us all the pertinent stories from Zimbabwe, which is having a bit of a sound issue. But we'll certainly be looking forward to seeing you and talking to you again. For now, we'll cross over into the weather.
We were just now in Zimbabwe. Now we cross over to Botswana, speaking to Masako Mohwasa with the latest news on the ground. Good morning.
Good morning to you in studio, and good morning, Africa. Pleasure to be here today.
I understand in your first story, Botswana plans to donate wild animals to less populated countries. Can you tell us more?
Yes, to deal with the wildlife and human conflict situation happening here in Botswana. Botswana is considering donating some wild animals to some developing countries. Botswana is considering to donate animals to some of its development partners. As the director in Department of Wildlife and National Parks, Dr. Bakang Senyato says this is as there are a number of requests that have been put through to the country for such donations. However, Dr. Senyato could not reveal the countries which have reached out to Botswana for wild animals, adding that this will happen once the deals have been finalized. This, as Botswana will be translocating 500 elephants to Mozambique after approving the request recently. Very interesting times. Now, the issue with human and wildlife conflict definitely is an issue here in Botswana. And we're hoping that this will resolve this, especially since the media isn't portraying the situation very well.
I do have to say, for me, that's one of the most memorable things about Botswana, the interaction between humans and animals, and obviously we hope that's mitigated well. Now, Bakang Seretse wins a 82 million Pula Nation Petroleum Fund appeal case. Tell us more about that.
Yes, Bakang Seretse has won an appeal brought by of 82 million pula regarding the National Petroleum Fund. Judge Monamiti Khaongalelwe this yesterday morning, handed businessman Bakang Seretse a win in the case this case has been looming for a couple of years, and a lot of people have been following it because it's it matters to so many people as far as the petrol situation that we're going through right now, and how the petroleum fund has been depleted rather terribly, and it's not available, to mitigate with the petrol situation right now. Initially, the High Court had ruled in favor of Seretse, and the state appealed the decision for the matter to be decided by the Court of Appeal. The judge has dismissed the case, saying that the state failed to establish on balance that indeed the properties that were acquired by Mr. Bakang Seretse were acquired illegally with funds from the MPF. As well, he pointed out that even if he knew that the funds were being mishandled and siphoned off by government officials, it was not established that he knew that the purpose for which it was actually used would not be for public interest. Now, there are a lot of people who are happy for his situation, but I know deep down a lot of people are just really mad at the government for carelessly handling the petroleum funds, and that his win really represents a Robin Hood situation, if you must say.
I see. Now, understand in your next story, Office of the President issues stern warning against misinformation about the first citizen. Can you expand more on this?
Yes, the government has spoken out sternly against what it deems misinformation about the President Mokgweetsi Masisi. In a strongly worded statement a day before Press Freedom Day, the acting permanent secretary John Dipuo set out to dispel certain untruths it said were being peddled by the former President Ian Khama, including tarnishing the name of the country by suggesting that President Masisi directly interferes in the affairs of the judiciary. Dipuo, in a bid to dispel what he deems attacks and untruths by the former head of state, stated that all citizens are equal before the law and that the judiciary is an independent arm of the state. He also said allegations that there is he also dispelled allegations that there's a plot to assassinate Ian Khama. Now, this is very interesting times in Botswana, especially at a time where we're trying to put freedom of speech at the forefront, however, also control misinformation and hate speech.
We'll certainly be keeping an eye on that political duel, which has been going on for quite long right now. Thank you very much, Maseko, for bringing us all the pertinent stories from Botswana.
Thank you for having me, and enjoy the rest of your week.
We certainly hope to do so as well. She's never given us a salute before. I quite like that. I quite do. Now, after the break, we'll start off talking about how in Mozambique, 50,000 people lost their jobs in 2021. That will be in our economic news. Stay with Africa. Good morning. You are still with your reliable source for African news and so much more. Africa, good morning. Right now, let's dive into economic news stories. More than 50,000 workers fired in 2021 in Mozambique. More than 50,000 workers in different sectors were fired or suspended from their activities without just cause in Mozambique in 2021. Of this number, just over half lost their employment, mainly in the tourism sector because of the COVID-19 pandemic. The figures were quoted by the Secretary General of the OTM Central Union, Alexandra Mungwambe, during a debate on Radio Mozambique's Lina Director program on Workers' Day 1 May. The theme for this year was trade unions in the fight against precarious work and high cost of living.
In our next economic story, EU proposes Russian oil ban to make Putin pay a high price for Ukraine, as well as sanction on its top bank and to ban Russian broadcasters from European airwaves in its toughest measure yet to punish Moscow for its war in Ukraine. The European Union's chief executive on Wednesday proposed a phased oil embargo on Russia, as well as sanction on its top bank and to ban Russian broadcasters from European airwaves in its toughest measure yet to punish Moscow for its war in Ukraine. The plan, if agreed by EU governments, would be a watershed for the world's largest trading bloc, which is dependent on Russian energy and must find alternative supplies, reflecting widespread anger in the West at Russian President Vladimir Putin's campaign, which Moscow says is a special military operation to defeat dangerous nationalists. The head of the EU executive said Moscow must face consequences. The Commission's measures include phasing out supplies of Russian crude oil within 6 months and refined products by the end of 2022. Von der Leyen pledged to minimize the impact on European economies. If agreed, the embargo would follow the United States and Britain, which have already imposed bans to cut one of the largest income streams to the Russian economy, as the West buys more than half of its crude and petroleum products from Russia. Ambassadors from the EU's 27 governments are expected to adopt the Commission proposal as early as this week, allowing them to become law soon after.
Now, in the last of our economic news stories, Buffett says he wouldn't buy all the Bitcoin in the world for $25. Billionaire investor Warren Buffett has again criticized cryptocurrency Bitcoin, saying he wouldn't buy all of it for $25. Speaking at the Berkshire Hathaway annual shareholder meeting in Omaha, Nebraska, Buffett said, "If you offered me all the Bitcoin in the world and you offered it to me for $25, I wouldn't take it, because what would I do with it? I would have to sell it back to you one way or another. It isn't going to do anything," he said. Buffett and the vice chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, Charles Munger, have been constant skeptics of cryptocurrencies, with Munger calling it a noxious poison, noted Bloomberg. And the pair aired their deep criticism again on Saturday, with Buffett noting that he'd rather own lots of farmland or apartments, what he calls productive assets, than Bitcoin. My goodness, talk about stepping straight into the rain with it. All right, those have been our economic news stories. Just before sport, here are your economic indicators. Now, a couple of days ago, someone very close to me told me we were going to Paris. I assumed I was going to Paris with that person, but turns out they were talking about Liverpool making it to the UEFA Champions League. Now, last night, Real Madrid made it back to the UEFA Champions League final, and Mo Salah put on his Instagram, "We have unfinished business." Something along those lines. I think I'm paraphrasing, but someone who does not paraphrase at all and brings you the sports in detail is Ari Hohad with the sports package up next.
Good day, everyone. Time for international sport, and starting off with tennis news. It is the men and women tour, the ATP and the WTA tours that's playing in Madrid at the moment, the Madrid Open. The women have been playing for a longer time, and they're closer to the finals. They at the quarterfinal stage at the moment, and one or two of the results I can mention to you is Emma Raducanu of England, of the Great Britain. She's a 9th seed. She's out of the tournament. She was beaten by Annalina Kalinina, and she is from the Ukraine. And the score there was 6-2, 2-6 and 6-4. Kalinina will now play against Jill Teichmann of Switzerland. It was Teichmann that beat Elena Rybakina, and she's the 16th seed. She's from Kazakhstan, and the score there was quite easy. That was 6-3 and 6-1. In the men's draw, it is world number 1, Novak Djokovic, that came through, and he's through to the round of 16, and he had a great one, according to all reports. That was his best tennis of the year so far, playing on clay, of course. That is a tournament in Madrid. He played against Gilles Monfils. He is from France, and he beat Monfils by 6-3 and 6-2. Also through to the last 16, or the round of 16, is the young sensation from Spain that won the previous tournament in Miami. That is Carlos Alcaraz. He is the 7th seed. He's just 18 years old, and he beat Nikolai Spashishvili. He is from Georgia, and the score there was 6-3 and 7-5. On to some soccer news, and it is the one result in the semi-finals of the UEFA Champions League. That is Liverpool that came through. They played against Villarreal. That game was played in Spain, and it was Liverpool that won by 3-2. They win the aggregate score then by 5-2, and they through to the final of the UEFA Champions League that will be played on the 28th of May. And that game will be played in Paris. It was a tough game for Liverpool. They were behind at halftime 2-0 against Villarreal, but then Liverpool scored 3 goals in the second half, 3 unanswered goals, to make the aggregate 5-2. Also, soccer news is that Bournemouth is back in the English Premier League. 3 teams will go up to the English Premier League. Bournemouth is the first one to go up, and they beat Nottingham Forest by 1-0. Nottingham Forest, that haven't been in the Premier League for 23 years, they still have a chance in playoff games to go up to the Premier League for 2023 season. And now for cricket news on international sport, and it is New Zealand cricket that announced Kane Williamson as their team captain. He's back from injury, so he will captain New Zealand in their tour to England. New Zealand will play 3 5-day tests starting off on the 2nd of June with the first one. That test will be played at Lord's. Also, England will have a new captain, and that is New Zealand born. That is Ben Stokes. He was born in Christchurch in New Zealand, and he took over from Joe Root. The previous series that was played between the two countries was last year when New Zealand hosted England in New Zealand, and it was New Zealand that came out winners in that series. That was New Zealand's first Test series win in 20 years over England. On to some golf news to close off our international sports news for today. It is the world rankings that was changed, and it is Jon Rahm of Spain, after winning the Mexican Open, that moved from number 3 in the world to number 2 in the world rankings. It is still Scotty Scheffler of the USA that is the world number 1. Quite a few Americans in the top 20. The number 3 golfer at the moment still is Colin Morikawa of the USA, and number 4 on the world rankings is Patrick Cantley, also of the USA. There is 11 USA American golfers in the top 20. Southern African interest is first golfer in the top 20 is Louis Oosthuizen, or the only golfer of Southern African interest in the top 20 is Louis Oosthuizen. He is 15th in the world currently. And then also it was Oliver Becker of Stellenbosch in Cape Town that moved up into the top 100. He is now number 89 in the world, and that was after finishing second over the weekend in Spain in the Catalunya Masters. So that's sporting news for today, the world sport news for today. Hope you have a great sport day, and we talk again tomorrow. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you for staying with Africa Good Morning, as we have been bringing you all the important stories stemming from the African continent and beyond. Now, if you perhaps missed our top stories at the top of the hour, worry not. Here are some of the headlines. Al-Shabaab claims deadly attack on AU base in Somalia. UN chief visits Sahel's martyred refugees. HRW warns of evidence of Central African Republic massacre by Russian-speaking men. More than 50,000 workers fired in 2021 in Mozambique. ITP and WTA tour continues. Those have been our stories.
And with that, we've come to the end of our show. Thank you for joining us on this lovely Thursday morning. Now, if you just joined us, do remember that Africa Good Morning repeats every day from 8:30 to 9:30. And it repeats on our channels, channel 94 on DSTV, on Gotv, and
yes.
channel 285 on DSTV. And if you have any comments or regards regarding our program,
opinions, videos, anything like that, by all means, send them through to Africa Good Morning on Twitter and Facebook.
I am Glenn Rashipura.
I am Ashwin Berry, and don't forget, click, 1up2.com. You can always find our content there too. Swera Jaganaka.